The colony on Lumen 9 had always been a quiet place. Most people there were scientists, calm, patient, and used to long days of routine research. They studied soil samples, strange minerals, and the soft glowing plants that grew naturally under the planet's thin atmosphere. Life was simple, and even though the world was far from the busy center of human space, the colonists liked it that way. Nothing exciting ever happened on Lumen 9. Nothing dangerous either, but that peace ended the night. The power first went out. It happened suddenly, like someone flipped the switch. One moment the labs were bright and humming with machines, and the next, everything fell silent. The lights blinked twice and shut down. Screens turned black. The air processors stuttered and groaned. Even the emergency lights took several long breaths of darkness before glowing to life. The colonists gathered in the main hall, confused and uneasy. Everyone expected the lights to come back quickly. Power outages happened on some outer worlds, usually when storms rolled across the surface. But Lumen 9 wasn't known for storms. In fact, the weather rarely changed at all. So when the power stayed off, people exchanged nervous looks. Several technicians tried to restart the systems, but nothing worked. Deep underground, where the colony was built for protection, the air felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves were worried. Still, no one panicked at first. They set up lanterns and battery lamps. They checked food supplies and confirmed that the water processors still worked. It felt more like a mild inconvenience than a true emergency. Then the tremors began. At first they were soft, almost easy to ignore. A rumble here and there, a slight shake underfoot, the type of vibration you'd expect if someone dropped heavy equipment nearby. But they kept happening slow, steady, and growing stronger each day. The scientists gathered in small groups, whispering about what might be causing it. Lumen 9 wasn't a volcanic world. It didn't have major tectonic activity. The ground had always been still and stable. So what was shaking their colony now? No one had an answer. Some of the colonists tried to push the worry aside. They told each other it was just machinery deep in the structure failing or the mining drones malfunctioning. But even the calm voices started to sound doubtful as the days passed. The tremors weren't the worst part. What truly frightened them were the sounds that followed. Late at night, when most people tried to sleep, strange echoes moved through the tunnels. Slow, dragging noises, sharp taps against metal, something brushing against the outer blast doors. The colony had strong walls, but they weren't meant to fight off unknown creatures. They were meant to protect researchers from the cold surface winds and dust storms. Nothing more. One night, a guard swore he saw a shadow move past the small observation window near the upper shaft. At first, everyone thought it was stress or exhaustion playing tricks on him. But the look in his eyes said otherwise. He wasn't the type to get scared easily, yet his hands shook when he tried to describe what he saw. Something tall, something not moving like a human, something too quick. After that, no one went near the observation points alone. Inside the colony, fear began to spread quietly. People tried to stay strong, especially the older researchers who felt responsible for everyone. They spoke softly, made plans, encouraged teamwork. But even they couldn't hide the tension in their faces when another tremor rattled the metal walls. There was one major problem they all knew. The colony was isolated, very isolated. Communications were weak, even at the best of times. They needed stable power to contact nearby stations, and without it, they were completely cut off. Every hour that passed without working communication made the colony feel smaller and more trapped. Dr. Rassin, the one responsible for communication systems, worked almost nonstop. She tried every trick she knew, rerouting power, using backup batteries, repairing damaged relays by hand, even tapping into old wires that hadn't been used in years. People brought her food and water, because she refused to leave the console room for long. She believed she could fix the system if she kept trying, but the power outages kept worsening. The emergency lights faded more each day. The temperature dropped slowly as the air processors fought to stay alive. It became harder to ignore the deep rumbling outside, which felt like something large moving around the edges of the colony. Whatever was out there, it was getting closer. People stopped sleeping well. Small arguments broke out over things that never mattered before sharing blankets, rationing food, taking turns in the warmest sections. The colony was safe underground, but without information or help, it felt like a metal cave waiting to be broken into. To calm themselves, the colonists started gathering in groups, talking softly about home, family, memories, and favorite meals. It helped ease the tension, but only for a little while. Everyone knew they were only comforting each other in the dark. As the fear grew inside the colony, outside the ground shook harder. Once, a tremor lasted nearly a full minute. Alarms blared. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Tools fell from shelves. People clutched each other or held on to support beams. When the shaking stopped, they waited for the next one. They all expected it. Something told them that whatever caused the tremors wasn't finished. Days passed like that, long, heavy, and filled with waiting. Waiting for the tremors. Waiting for sounds outside the metal walls. Waiting for the power to finally fail altogether. Waiting for help that felt too far away. Still, Dr. Rassin kept trying, even when everyone else said the system was beyond repair. She refused to give up. Everyone knew she was exhausted, her eyes red and her voice rough, but she stayed there, tapping away at wires and circuits that looked dead. Then one day, as the colony sat in near darkness, a loud click echoed through the hallways. A speaker crackled sharply. People froze mid-step, turning toward the nearest communication panel. The colony held its breath. A small, weak pulse flickered on the screen. It wasn't clear at first, just static and faint distortion. But then Dr. Rassin yelled for everyone to stay quiet. She leaned over the panel, fingers flying across the controls, trying to catch the signal before it faded. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then the static sharpened. A voice, metallic, heavy, and absolutely not a normal human relay, cut through the speakers. Distress signal received. Response unit deploying. Those words alone would have been enough to make people cry with relief. But then came something stranger. Something the colonists didn't expect. Something that made their relief turn instantly into confusion and uncertainty. Deathworlder expeditionary response activated. Silence spread through the colony like a cold wind. Everyone had heard rumors about Deathworlders. Humans from the most extreme, most dangerous planets. People trained for brutal environments. People stronger, tougher, and more resistant to harm than anyone else. Not monsters, not villains, but definitely not ordinary rescue workers. Some colonists felt hope rising. Others felt fear. The stories about Deathworlders made them sound almost too intense, too powerful, too unpredictable. If they were coming, it meant the distress signal was taken seriously. But it also meant the danger outside wasn't something small. It meant the colony was facing something big enough to call in the strongest humans known to space. Even with that fear, people still felt a flicker of comfort. At least someone heard them. At least someone was coming. They weren't alone anymore. That night, the colony went quiet, not peaceful quiet, but the quiet of people clinging to hope. Every person tried to sleep a little, but most lay awake listening to the faint tremors above. They wondered what the Deathworlders would look like, how soon they would arrive, and most of all, whether they would come in time. Until the moment the ground shook again, harder than before. Dust fell like soft rain from the ceiling. The walls groaned. Whatever was out there, it was moving again. And now it knew the colony was still alive. The colonists sat, waited, and hoped. The Deathworlders arrived before the darkness outside decided to break in. The colony had gone quiet after the strange message came through. People sat together in small groups, whispering about what they heard. The repeating words still echoed in everyone's mind. Distress signal received. Response unit deploying. And then that odd, almost unsettling line. Deathworlder Expeditionary Response activated. No one really knew what that meant. Everyone had heard stories, half-truths, rumors, old tales shared between planets about humans who grew up in the harshest places, who could survive extremes most people wouldn't last a minute in. Some said Deathworlders were almost superhuman. Others said they were just very tough people with intense training. But nobody in the colony had ever seen one in person. They only knew that if a Deathworlder team was being sent, the situation must be serious. But serious how? Serious because the colony was in danger? Or serious because whatever was outside was something the colony was never meant to face? These questions floated around as people tried to stay calm. They drank warm mineral water from cracked cups, shared protein bars, and tried not to stare too long at the flickering lights. The emergency power system was growing weaker each day, and everyone knew it. Sometimes the lights faded so low that the room looked like twilight. Other times they brightened too quickly, humming loudly as if the circuits were under stress. In the middle of all this, the person responsible for communications was still checking the system every few minutes. Even though the message had already come in, even though the signal had been acknowledged, she kept monitoring it as if she feared the connection would disappear if she looked away for even a moment. Everyone else watched her too, waiting for updates, waiting for the next sound from the speaker, waiting for anything that would tell them the rescue team was closer. But nothing else came. Not for hours. Instead, the tremors returned. They were lighter this time, almost like something shifting far underground. The colonists had grown used to them by now, though not in a comforting way. Every shake made someone jump or drop whatever they were holding. Nobody said it out loud because they didn't want to scare each other, but everyone wondered the same thing. What if the tremors weren't random? What if something was causing them on purpose? The scientists tried to make sense of it. They pulled up old geological maps, searched through notes, and looked over years of data. Nothing suggested the planet should be shaking this much. Lumen 9 had always been stable. That was the main reason they built a colony there in the first place. One technician suggested that maybe the recent power failures were affecting the colony's underground stabilizers, causing vibrations. That idea made people feel a little better for a while. But a stabilizer malfunction didn't explain the noises outside the metal walls. It didn't explain the shadows seen near the observation window. It didn't explain how the tremors seemed to grow stronger whenever the colony went quiet, almost as if something was listening. The hours stretched on. People tried to distract themselves. Some read old digital books on their handheld devices. Others played cards under dim lights. A few sat together and talked about how they ended up on Lumen 9, what they liked about it, what they missed about Earth or other stations. These conversations helped keep everyone grounded. They reminded people that they weren't trapped in a nightmare. They were real humans, sharing real fear, doing their best to stay hopeful. At one point, someone asked gently, "When do you think they'll arrive?" No one answered right away. They looked at each other, searching for someone with confidence or optimism. But nobody wanted to give a wrong guess. Finally, one of the older scientists spoke. "If they hurt us, they will come. That much we can believe." It wasn't a clear answer, but it gave people something to hold on to. Later, the communication panel crackled again, not words this time, just static. Loud at first, then soft, then gone. Everyone tensed. Some moved closer, hoping another message would follow. But it didn't. The silence felt heavy afterward, like the colony was holding its breath. Hours passed like this, waiting, listening, hoping and then something new happened. A sharp beep cut through the quiet room. The communication panel lit up faintly, and a tiny green signal indicator flashed weak. But there, the communications. Officer leaned in closer, adjusting the knobs and testing connections. The speakers hissed, then vibrated as if someone on the other end was trying to push through. A distorted voice finally broke through. It wasn't clear, and it wasn't fully understandable, but certain words came through clean enough to recognize. Response. Unit, inbound, hold position, assistance. Approaching. The colonists felt a wave of relief rush through them. Not a full wave, just enough to loosen the tightness in their chests. The message didn't give a time, didn't say how close the team was, but it confirmed one important thing. Help was on the way. After that, more people started looking toward the future instead of the fear around them. Some talked about how the Deathworlders might travel big armored ships, maybe. Some wondered what equipment they used. Others imagined them as calm, focused rescuers who always arrived exactly when needed. A few, though, still felt nervous. They whispered about whether the Deathworlders were too strong, too intense, too unpredictable. What if their arrival made things worse? What if whatever was outside responded badly to their presence? But even those worries faded a little as people reminded themselves that anyone answering a distress call must have good intentions. All they could do now was wait. And waiting wasn't easy. The tremors returned again, heavier this time. One shook the room so hard that several crates toppled over. A cup rolled across the floor. Someone's lantern flickered out. People steadied, themselves against the walls, eyes wide and hearts pounding. The moment the shaking stopped, every person looked upward, as if expecting something to break through the ceiling. But nothing happened. The air settled, and the colony let out a collective sigh. After that, some of the younger researchers suggested keeping watch in small shifts. Not because they expected an attack, just because it felt better to have someone awake, someone listening, someone ready to alert the others if anything changed. It helped people feel safer. 2 volunteers took the first shift. They sat near. The blast door with battery lamps and a portable audio sensor tuned to the outside environment. The sensor picked up wind sounds, small distant vibrations, and the occasional faint echo of something moving far away. But nothing too close, nothing threatening. For now, in the resting areas, the colonists tried to get some sleep. Most lay, awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the rescue team, thinking about what they would say when they arrived, thinking about how strange the word Deathworlder still sounded, even though it was now the colony's biggest hope. Some people whispered little thoughts to themselves in the dark, quiet wishes that the rescue team would arrive soon. Others pressed their hands together, almost like a silent prayer. Not religious, just human, just desperate, just hopeful. Meanwhile, outside the colony, something changed. A faint sound reached the audio sensors. A low, distant hum. Not from the ground, not from the wind, not from any natural source. It sounded mechanical, strong, controlled. The volunteers leaned closer to listen. Their eyes widened. They glanced at each other, but did not speak loudly, afraid to miss even a second of the noise. They waited, listening carefully. The hum grew louder. Then, almost only for a moment, it faded again. The volunteers shared a slow breath. They didn't want to alert the whole colony until they were sure. But deep down, both of them knew what it probably meant. Something was approaching from above. Possibly a ship, possibly the rescue team. They waited for more signs. 10 minutes passed, 15. And then, just when they started to doubt themselves, the sound returned stronger now. Closer now. One volunteer hurried to the communication hall to report it. People sat up immediately, wide-eyed. They listened too, and though the sound was still faint, it was real. Definitely real. It didn't sound like danger, but it sounded like hope. Then the communication panel flashed again. Another fragmented message pushed its way through the static. Touchdown in minutes. Hold tight, remain inside. Do not open. The message cut off, but the meaning was clear enough. The rescue team was coming. The colonists gathered together, hearts racing not from fear this time, but from something else. Relief. After so many days in darkness, after so many tremors and strange noises, after so much uncertainty, help was finally close. They didn't know what the Deathworlders looked like, or how they worked, or what would happen next, but they knew this. They were no longer alone, and somewhere above the surface, engines glowed in the sky, bringing help closer with every passing second. The colony felt different the moment the strange humming sound started drifting through the audio sensors. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't constant. It came and went like a faraway engine, fighting against thick air. But to the colonists, it was the most hopeful noise they had heard in days. People stood still whenever the sound returned, trying to decide if it was real or their imagination. After so much fear, their minds played tricks easily, but the sound grew stronger. Not by much, but enough that one person quietly said what everyone else was thinking. That has to be them. Those words spread through the crowd like a warm breeze. Even though no one fully understood what a Deathworlder rescue team looked like, they all knew one thing: they were coming. And now the colony could feel it. Still, the fear was not gone. The noises and tremors outside had not stopped. In fact, the tremors seemed to react to the approaching sound. Every time the faint hum moved closer, the ground gave a small shiver, as if something large on the surface was disturbed by the engine noise. The colonists didn't know whether this meant danger or something else, but they stayed prepared. People checked lanterns, re-secured their blankets, and moved children and elders to the safest corners. Even the scientists, who were usually calm and logical, felt uneasy. Too much had happened in the past days for anyone to relax now. One of the watch volunteers returned from the blast door holding an audio device. "The sound is coming from the upper ridge," he said. "It's getting closer." People gathered near the small central hall where the air processors hummed softly. They wanted to hear every update. They wanted to feel connected to the rescue team, even though they couldn't see anything yet. Another tremor rolled across the floor, stronger than the last few. The metal walls creaked slightly. Dust drifted down from places no one could reach. A few colonists grabbed each other's hands instinctively. Someone whispered, "What if whatever is outside is reacting to the dropships?" The communications officer shook her head. "Doesn't matter. Help is coming faster than anything can reach us." That gave the group a little comfort. But the next sound that followed didn't come from the sky. It came from above the colony roof slow, scraping, dragging. Something heavy shifting across the upper ground level. The sound wasn't loud, but it was enough to make everyone go silent. The volunteers watching the sensors leaned closer. The audio screen displayed the wave pattern of the movement: slow, heavy steps, or something sliding. No one was sure. Then the tremor stopped. The dragging noise stopped too. It was as if whatever had been up there paused. Listening. The colonists held their breath. The silence stretched longer and longer until someone let out a shaky exhale. "Maybe it's just the ground settling," someone suggested, more out of hope than belief. But deep down, they all knew something was out there. Something that had been circling, watching, waiting. Hours passed with the same pattern: soft engine sounds from the sky, faint tremors from above, silence that felt too heavy. Time moved slowly underground, like each minute had to push itself forward, to keep themselves calm. People gathered in groups again. They shared stories of the lives they had before. Lumen 9, Someone talked about the garden they kept on a station years ago. Someone else described how they used to watch meteor showers as a child. Another person quietly explained the reason they joined the science program, because they liked peaceful places, far from busy worlds. That line made several people smile sadly. Lumen 9 had been peaceful once. In the middle of these conversations, the communication panel suddenly lit up again. The workers quickly rushed over. The green indicator blinked twice, and the speaker hissed. After a moment, a low, strong voice came through, still broken, still distant, but clearer than before. Response team, approaching surface entry. Prepare for contact. The colonists looked at each other, amazed. Contact. That meant the rescue team was close enough to land. Close enough to touch down. Close enough that the colony would soon hear their footsteps on the surface. People straightened up, wiped their faces, adjusted clothing, and tried to look composed. Even in an emergency, there was something comforting about getting ready to meet the people who were coming to help. Then the voice on the speaker continued, though the message cut in and out. Stay inside. Do not exit. We will reach you shortly. The communication officer nodded. We won't go outside, she promised aloud, even though the team on the other side couldn't hear her clearly. Just then, a deep vibration came through the ceiling, steady, rhythmic, mechanical. Much too controlled to be an earthquake. Much too strong to be simple wind. Several colonists gasped softly. The sound grew until small dust particles drifted down again, shaking loose with each pulse. That's a ship, someone whispered. Eyes wide. No one argued. Everyone went silent again. Not out of fear this time, but in awe. The colony had been quiet for so long. No new sounds, no visitors, no signs of help. Now the sky above them was rumbling with engines, powerful enough to shake the upper soil. And that rumble wasn't alone. Another tremor shook the ground. But it wasn't random this time. It felt like something moving on the surface, something reacting to the new arrivals. The sensors picked up the sound of multiple impacts above, soft thuds, like heavy objects landing in a pattern. The volunteers checked the display. Those are footsteps, one of them said. Footsteps? That didn't seem possible. No human footsteps could shake the ground like that. Not unless the person was wearing extremely heavy gear. Or unless the thought hung unspoken. But everyone knew it. Deathworlders had landed. But the strange part wasn't their arrival. It was the fact that the tremors outside began to fade the moment those heavy steps hit the ground. As if the unknown presence on the surface felt the newcomers and backed away. Whatever had been creeping around the upper ridges was suddenly nowhere near the colony anymore. The audio monitors showed no dragging sounds, no scratching, no slow footsteps that weren't human. All of it vanished as if wiped clean. The colonists looked around nervously. Why would it run? Someone asked. What could scare something like that away? But no one answered. The rescue team was definitely getting closer. More thuds echoed above, organized, calm, powerful. Not rushed. Not panicked. Whoever these people were, they moved like they were in control of the situation. Like they had done this hundreds of times. After a few minutes, a loud metallic sound rang through the colony. It echoed through the halls, bouncing off the walls. It wasn't alarming, more like someone knocking on a huge metal structure from the outside. The colonists froze again. They had never heard the blast doors take an impact from the outside before. But the knock came again, heavy enough to tremble the floor. Soft enough not to damage anything. 3 knocks. Then silence. Everyone stared toward the ceiling. Toward the blast door tunnels that led to the surface exit. They knew the rescue team was signaling, but the main control room was deep inside the colony. No one could open the blast door manually, not from here. It didn't matter anyway. The voice had said not to open anything. Another knock. Then the voice returned on the speaker, slightly clearer now. surface secure, preparing to access entry systems. Remain calm. Remain calm. The words helped. The colonists nodded to each other, trying to believe that everything would be all right now. But just as that comfort settled in, a new sound shivered through the speakers, something fast, something sharp, something not mechanical. The audio pattern spiked for a second, then faded. The volunteers exchanged worried glances. Was that? One of them began. But before anyone could finish, the communication panel spoke again, firm, steady, giving them exactly what they needed to hear. We have arrived. Stand by. Those 4 words were enough to bring several people close to tears. They had been waiting in fear for days, trapped underground with nothing but trembling walls and strange noises. Now, above them, powerful boots pressed into the soil, marking the arrival of the strongest rescue force humanity had. The Deathworlders were here. Their shadows moved across the surface, blocking the weak sunlight that filtered through cracks in the ground. Their footsteps echoed like calm thunder. The colony didn't know what they looked like yet. They didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, they had hope strong enough to push back the fear. And now, everything was about to change. The colony had grown used to darkness, not because they liked it, but because there was no choice. For days, dim lanterns and emergency lines were the only things keeping the long underground hallways from turning completely black. So when the blast doors finally unlocked with a slow, heavy click, the sound traveled through the entire structure like a spark waking up a sleeping building. People stopped what they were doing. Some were sitting on the floor resting. Some were checking battery packs. A few were sharing a quiet drink near the heating vents. But the moment that metallic click echoed, every pair of eyes lifted. The doors never opened from the outside. It wasn't supposed to be possible. They were designed to let people in from the surface, only after commands were given from inside. But this time, there were no commands. The rescue team had overridden the system. The locks hissed as pressure shifted inside the main corridor. The colonists moved closer, forming a loose circle around the entrance. No one stood too near. Fear still lived in all of them, but curiosity pushed them forward. After days of imagining what was happening outside, they were finally going to see something with their own eyes. A second click rang out, sharper this time. The blast doors cracked open, just enough to let in a line of brightness that cut across the dark floor. Even that small sliver of sunlight felt powerful. It looked unreal, too bright after so many hours spent underground. People squinted, covering their faces. Some blinked rapidly, surprised by how strong the light felt. A few even stepped back because their eyes weren't ready for it. The brightness reminded them how much time they had spent in cold shadows. A gust of fresh, cool air drifted in air from the surface, air that wasn't recycled through machines. It carried the scent of dust and open land. It smelled strange, but real, like the world above was calling them back. Slowly, the gap widened. The brightness spread across the hallway, gently washing over the group. When the space became wide enough, shadows moved against the light dot at first. They looked like tall, solid shapes too large to be ordinary workers, too steady to be machines. Then the shapes stepped forward, and the colonists felt a quiet hush fall over the entire room. The Deathworlders had arrived. They entered in a calm, controlled way, not fast or dramatic. Their movements were smooth, their footsteps heavy but not aggressive. Their armor reflected the sunlight, throwing small glints onto the walls. Each piece looked built to handle storms, heat, pressure, things normal humans couldn't stand. The first Deathworlder paused just inside the doorway, letting their eyes adjust to the dimmer underground light. The colonists noticed how tall the rescuer was, at least a head taller than almost everyone in the room. Not frightening, but strong in a way that made them look like they belonged in harsh places, Another stepped in, behind the first one. Then a third. They came in a line, silent except for the sound of their gear shifting lightly. There was nothing wild or intimidating in the way they moved. Everything was precise, steady, and professional. One of the colonists whispered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. They looked like sunlight walked into the room. It was true. The metallic armor caught the light in a way that made them seem brighter than the hallway. The colonists weren't used to seeing anything shine underground. For a moment, they weren't looking at warriors or rescuers. They were looking at symbols of hope. Stepping slowly into a place filled with fear, the Deathworlder at the front lifted one hand, palm open, showing they meant no harm. Their voice came through a translator built into the suit, calm and clear. "We're here to help. You're safe now." The colonists didn't cheer or cry out. The relief was too deep, too heavy, too overwhelming to express loudly. Instead, they just breaths, slow, shaky breaths they had been holding for days. A few eyes filled with tears. A few shoulders sagged. Someone quietly whispered, "Thank you." The Deathworlders began scanning the room, checking for injuries, checking the weak parts of the structure, checking if the air quality was stable. They moved methodically, not wasting a single step. Everything about them showed experience. These people had done this before, many times. A smaller member of the rescue team stepped forward with a handheld device and said, "We need to inspect the upper tunnels. Stay here until we say it's clear." No one argued. The colonists knew better than to wander after everything that had happened outside. As the Deathworlders moved deeper into the colony, their footsteps echoed with a confidence no one inside had felt in a long time. People watched them pass, amazed at how calm they were. After endless days of fear, these rescuers walked as if the danger outside was nothing more than a routine problem. The bright sunlight still streamed through the open blast door. It made the dusty floor glow softly, like the world above was trying to reassure them. Some colonists drifted closer, wanting to feel its warmth. Others stayed back, still shaken by the sudden change. One of the elders stepped slowly into the light. He held out his hands and let the brightness touch his skin. "I forgot how warm real light feels," he said quietly. Another person joined him, blinking and smiling weakly. Soon more followed. It wasn't a rush, just a gentle movement forward, like plants leaning toward a sunbeam after growing in shade too long. But their peace didn't last long. Sudden vibration moved through the ground, not strong, but not natural either. The Deathworlders stopped mid-step. The colonists froze too. Everyone listened. The vibration faded. Then another came, this time softer, like something shifting at a distance. One of the Deathworlders raised a hand for silence. They tilted their heads slightly, listening to a signal only their suit could detect. Then they turned to the colonists. "There's movement on the surface," they said carefully. "Nothing close. Nothing threatening. Our team is handling it." People exchanged worried looks. Even though the rescuers sounded calm, the colonists couldn't help feeling nervous. They had lived with the tremors too long not to react. A few seconds later, a faint metallic vibration echoed above their heads. Not dangerous, but clearly part of the rescue team's equipment. The Deathworlder explained, "Drones. They're mapping the surface. We're securing the area." That eased some tension. If drones were out there, it meant the rescue team had control of the situation. The Deathworlders paused for a moment, then continued deeper into the colony. Their armor made soft clinks as they walked. They checked power lines, old stations, structural beams. Everywhere they went, the colonists followed at a safe distance, watching with a mix of awe and relief. Eventually, the Deathworlder at the front stopped and turned toward the group. "You can step outside shortly," they said. "The surface is clear." Those words sent a strange mixture of excitement and fear through the room. Many people hadn't seen the surface in days. Some hadn't even stepped near the blast doors since the first tremors began, but slowly they moved toward the doorway. The sunlight was stronger now, filling the hall with a golden glow. The sky outside looked soft and open, like a promise that the darkness underground was only temporary. One by one, the colonists stepped into the brightness. It felt unreal at first, the warmth on their skin, the wind on their faces, the open space stretching endlessly around them. After so many days trapped inside, the world felt huge again. They shielded their eyes and looked around. At the ridge above the colony stood several tall figures, more Deathworlders, watching the horizon with calm attention. Their armor shimmered under the sun. Behind them, mechanical drones hovered in quiet circles, scanning the land. None of the strange shapes or noises from the past days remained. It was as if the entire surface had been cleared while the colonists were still underground. A soft breeze drifted past, carrying dust, but no fear. One colonist whispered, "It's over." Another said, "They did it already." And that was the truth. The Deathworlders had arrived so quickly, so quietly, with such purpose, that whatever threat had been circling the colony had simply disappeared. Not in a violent way, not in a dramatic way, just erased by their presence. Like shadows pushed back by a bright light, the colonists stood together, amazed, breathing fresh air, feeling sunlight on their faces after days of darkness. For the first time in a long time, they weren't listening for tremors or strange noises. They were listening to the quiet, peaceful sound of wind. The Deathworlders hadn't just rescued them. They had brought the brightness back. The moment the colonists stepped into the sunlight, something inside them loosened. It wasn't just relief. It was the feeling of finally being able to breathe without fear. For days, they had lived with the weight of the unknown pressing on their shoulders. Now, standing under the open sky again, that heavy pressure began to melt away, little by little. The surface looked different from what they remembered. The ground was cracked where the tremors had hit hardest. A few supply crates had tipped over and rolled down the slope. Dust still floated in the air, carrying the smell of disturbed earth. But nothing dangerous moved on the horizon. Everything was still. The Deathworlders stood on higher ground, watching the area with calm attention. Their armor reflected the sunlight, making them look like living guardians carved out of light and metal. They didn't speak loudly or try to control the colonists. They just stood there, steady and focused, almost blending into the landscape despite their heavy suits. The colonists gathered in small groups. Some sat on fallen crates or large stones, taking slow breaths. Others walked around quietly, touching the ground with their hands as if checking if it was real. One person knelt to scoop up a handful of dirt, letting it slip through their fingers. It was strange how something so ordinary could feel so comforting. The air was warm. Not too hot, just gentle enough to remind everyone what sunlight felt like on the skin after spending long hours underground. People closed their eyes and lifted their faces, enjoying every second. After a while, one of the Deathworlders walked down the slope toward them. The armor made soft metallic sounds with each step, but nothing harsh. The suit's visor adjusted to the light, turning slightly transparent, so the colonists could see a relaxed expression behind it. "Everyone stable?" The rescuer asked, voice calm through the translator. A few people nodded. Some raised their hands uncertainly. Most were still too overwhelmed to speak. The Deathworlders scanned the group, checking for signs of exhaustion or injury. "Take your time. You're safe up here," they said gently. "We've cleared the surface and secured the outer zone." Those words brought a wave of relief over the group. Some let out long breaths they had been holding without realizing. Others visibly relaxed their shoulders. A quiet murmur passed through the crowd as people reassured each other that it truly was over. More rescue team members approached, carrying hydration packs and small medical kits. They handed out water, energy bars, and light blankets for anyone still cold from the underground shelter. The colonists accepted everything gratefully. A young technician from the colony looked at the sealed sky drones flying overhead. "They're still scanning?" The technician asked nervously. "Yes," the Deathworlder replied. "Standard procedure?" They mapped the terrain, checked for structural instability, and looked for any signs of leftover danger. But everything looks clear. The readings are clean. The colonists watched the drones spinning in smooth circles. Their quiet humming felt almost comforting now. A reminder that the rescue team wasn't leaving anything unchecked. One of the elders took a slow step forward, leaning slightly on a support rod. "We thought the worst had happened," he said, voice trembling but steady. It felt like something outside was waiting for us. The Deathworlder listened without interrupting. "We heard things," the elder continued. "Strange sounds. Shifts in the ground. Like something was moving in ways we didn't understand." The rescuer nodded. "The tremors caused a lot of distortion. Echoes can travel strangely through underground tunnels. Your readings showed several natural pressure shifts near the fault line. Nothing alive. Nothing intelligent. Just unstable terrain." The elder nodded slowly. The explanation made sense, and hearing it from someone trained, even someone so different, brought a sense of closure. Another colonist, a maintenance worker, stepped forward. "How did you reach us so fast?" he asked. "We didn't think anyone could break through the storm walls in time." The Deathworlder tilted their heads slightly. "Your signal was weak, but our system picked up fragments. We traced them back and deployed as soon as we could. We've handled worse storms before." The colonists exchanged surprised looks. The storm that had hit their region felt enormous to them, something impossible to cross. The idea that these rescuers had moved through it, almost effortlessly, was both humbling and comforting. The sun climbed higher, making the ground glow with a soft golden shade. People began to walk around more freely. Some explored the slopes near the entrance. Others moved toward the small landing field where supply ships would soon arrive. Deathworlders supervised everything calmly, never rushing anyone. They only stepped in when someone got too close to unstable rocks or damaged equipment. One colonist found a cracked communication terminal half buried under dust. He picked it up carefully and held it toward the nearest Deathworlder. "Can this be repaired?" he asked. "We'll retrieve it," the rescuer said. "But no need to worry about repairs right now. You'll be transported to the main settlement soon. They have full facilities for restoration and support." The colonist nodded gratefully, set the broken terminal down, and joined the others again. Some time passed in easy silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence you feel after surviving something difficult, when your body is tired, but your heart is steadying itself again. Deathworlders gathered briefly on the ridge, speaking through their helmet cones. Then the one who had spoken earlier returned to the colonists. "Our transport vehicles will be here in about an hour," they said. "You'll be taken to a safe zone. You'll get food, rest, and full medical evaluation." One colonist asked softly, "Will we be able to come back here later?" "Yes," the Deathworlder said. "Once the structural team checks everything. We won't abandon your home." Those words made several colonists smile with relief. The thought of losing their colony had weighed heavily on them. Even though they wanted to rest and recover, they didn't want to leave forever. Then something unexpected happened. A child, one of the youngest colonists, barely old enough to understand the danger they'd been in, walked up to the lead Deathworlder. The child reached out and touched the rescuer's armor with small fingers, curious about the hard metallic surface. Instead of stepping back, the Deathworlder slowly crouched to eye level. Their visors softened to a gentle shade, showing the eyes behind it. The child whispered, "Are you a hero?" The Deathworlder paused, then smiled softly. "No," they said. "Just someone who didn't want you to be scared." The child nodded like that answer made perfect sense. It was a small moment, but it warmed everyone standing nearby. For days they had felt helpless, trapped, and frightened. Seeing one of the strongest beings in the galaxy speak so gently to a child reminded them that strength didn't always have to be loud or fierce. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes it arrived dressed in bright armor, stepping out of sunlight after days of darkness. One of the colonists wiped their eyes discreetly. Another placed a hand on a companion's shoulder. The atmosphere changed again, not just relieved now, but hopeful. Soon, the distant hum of engines drifted across the landscape. Everyone turned to look. Two heavy transport carriers were approaching from the west, gliding low over the ground. Their shadows stretched across the valley as they prepared to land. Dust swirled around the landing site. The Deathworlders formed a loose perimeter, guiding the colonists gently but firmly toward the safe zone. People moved slowly, some still tired, some still overwhelmed, but all ready to leave the fear of the underground behind. As the carriers touched down, their large side ramps opened with smooth mechanical precision. Warm air flowed out from inside the cabins, carrying the smell of fresh supplies and clean filters. The Deathworlders motioned for the colonists to board. One by one, they climbed the ramp. Some looked back at the colony entrance, where sunlight now streamed freely over the cracked ground. It was a reminder of everything they had survived, and a promise of what waited for them ahead. When the last colonist stepped aboard, the lead Deathworlder stayed outside for a moment. They looked around the landscape, scanning it one final time. Then they walked up the ramp, and the doors closed with a quiet hiss. Inside, the colonists settled into soft seats. Safety straps clicked into place. A gentle hum filled the cabin as the carriers prepared for takeoff. Someone whispered, "We made it," another answered, "because they came." The engines grew louder, lifting the carriers smoothly off the ground. The colony shrank below them first, a cluster of rocks, then a shadow among hills. Then just a memory of the hardest days they had ever faced. The sun shone brightly through the cabin windows, washing everyone in warm light. For the first time since the tremors began, the colonists let themselves truly feel the future. They were safe. They were together. And the Deathworlders had brought them home. The ride inside the transport carrier felt smoother than anything the colonists had experienced in days. The hum of the engines was steady, almost calming, like the sound of distant waves. People sat quietly in their seats, some leaning back with their eyes closed, others staring out the small windows as the ground slowly disappeared beneath them. For the first time in what felt like forever, no one was tense. No one flinched at every small sound. The darkness they once feared was far below them now, shrinking with every passing minute. The carrier's lights glowed softly, giving the cabin a warm, gentle atmosphere. It felt safe, almost like a moving shelter carrying their hopes toward something better. One colonist whispered, "I can't believe it's finally over." Someone beside them replied, "I didn't think we'd see the sky again." People weren't speaking loudly, just quietly, as if they were afraid of breaking the fragile peace that had finally settled over them. But their voices carried relief, the kind that comes only after surviving something heavy and long. A few seats away, a child curled up under a soft blanket given to them by the rescue team. The child's breathing was slow and peaceful. The adults sitting nearby smiled at the sight, feeling their shoulders relax a little. If the youngest among them could finally sleep safely, then maybe everything really was okay now. The Deathworlders sat in the back rows, their armor powered down to a quieter mode. They didn't take up much space, despite their large suits. They sat calmly, watching the colonists with a protective awareness. Even in rest, their presence radiated steadiness. They didn't act like heroes. They didn't boast. They simply sat there like guardians who refused to let fear return. After some time, one of the colonists turned toward the Deathworlder closest to them. "Will our colony be repaired?" they asked softly. The Deathworlder's visor shifted slightly as they looked over. "Yes," they said. "Our teams will reinforce the structures and stabilize the area. You'll have the option to return once it's fully safe." The colonist nodded slowly, comforted by the certainty in their voice. "Thank you," they said, "for everything." The rescuer simply replied, "You did your part. You held on. That matters." The words touched everyone within earshot. It wasn't just the rescue that mattered. It was their survival, their patience, the courage they didn't even know they had until the darkest moments forced it out of them. Minutes turned into an hour as the carrier crossed valleys and ridges, heading toward the main settlement. The sky outside shifted from bright gold to soft blue. Clouds drifted lazily, untouched by the fear that had chased the colonists underground. Everything looked so normal from above, so peaceful, that it felt almost strange to think they had been trapped in fear just a short time ago. Eventually, the carriers began to descend. The hum of the engines grew deeper, and the cabin lights brightened slightly. People straightened in their seats, holding on to the armrests as they felt the gentle drop out the windows. The main settlement appeared, a wide, organized area filled with bright structures, landing pads, and glowing path markers. It looked like a safe place built with care, where people lived without looking over their shoulders. Every few minutes the carriers touched down with almost no shake. The ramps lowered, letting in fresh air. It carried the scent of open land mixed with the crisp smell of well-maintained machinery. The colonists looked around with curious eyes as they stood up, some stretching stiff muscles after hours of tension. The Deathworlders guided them calmly. "Take your time," one said. "No rush. There are aid stations straight ahead." People walked down the ramp slowly, some stepping onto solid ground with trembling legs. It wasn't fear this time, just the body reacting to the return of normal life. A few colonists even laughed softly. The Sound Light and Sincere medical teams were waiting nearby, offering water, food packs, and quick health checks. They spoke kindly, never pushing, always patient. Each colonist was treated with the gentle attention someone needs after going through a frightening experience. Nearby, large screens showed a map of the settlement, highlighting temporary living units prepared for them. Clean rooms, warm beds, meals ready. Everything they needed. A younger colonist looked around in wonder. "It feels like a different world." "It's the same world," another replied. "Just the part we forgot existed." While the colonists settled into the safe zone, the Deathworlders gathered near the landing area, discussing their next steps. Their tone remained calm, but there was a quiet seriousness in their posture. "The